Hey, it's Roy Hill with Brownells again, and today we've got another gun from the vault. The gun we have from the vault today is my personal 3040 Krag. The Krag was significant for a number of reasons. It was the first smokeless powder cartridge rifle adopted for U.S. military issue. And interestingly enough, it wasn't American. It was actually from Denmark, so it's a Danish rifle. The full name of the rifle is the Krag. Lots of times Americans say Jørgensen, Krag-Jørgensen. The correct pronunciation would be something like Krag-Jørgensen. So, I mean, if you want to sound Danish, you say Krag-Jørgensen, but if you want to just sound American, lots of Americans just say the J with a J, so Krag-Jørgensen. It's chambered in what came to be known the 3040 Krag Cartridge. Of course, it wasn't called that when it was a U.S. military issue starting about 1896. It was just called 30 U.S. or 30 U.S. military or something like that. So it's a 30 caliber bullet, and it's called a 3040 because being developed in the late 19th century, they're still using the old black powder terminology for naming cartridges. So a real familiar one might be the 4570, which means you've got a 45 caliber bullet sitting on top of 70 grains of black powder. Of course, another ballistically similar cartridge would be the classical 3030 Winchester, which you'd have a 30 caliber bullet on top of a 40 grain charge of black powder. Again, the 3040 Krag has a 30 caliber bullet, but it's using smokeless powder. Again, the very first U.S. service rifle to use smokeless powder. And the cartridge actually kind of looks a lot like a 3030. It's a little bit taller around the shoulder. So it's a rimmed cartridge. So if you stand a 3030 and a 3040 next to each other, they look pretty darn similar. 3040 is just a little bit taller. Here's some of the interesting features on my Model 1898 Krag rifle. First up, as you can see, this one hasn't been chopped and sporterized. These guns were chopped into handy sporting deer rifles by the ton. For a while in the United States, these were kind of like the American version of the Mosin Nagant, if you will. Back when Mosins a few years ago, you could get them for $75. Well, there were even places such as through the Civilian Marksmanship Program of the NRA a long time ago, you could get surplus Krags for like $2.50 a piece. So these were very, very popular to get cheap and sporterized. So this one, fortunately, has not been chopped. It's still in full military dress. One of the interesting features of the Krag is, of course, this funky looking side box magazine. And the way the Krag system works, when you get ready to load, you just flip that open, you take 5 cartridges off your belt or out of your pouch, and you just drop them in there. You close it, and you're loaded. Krag is known for having a very smooth, easy to operate bolt. This one is no exception. I mean, that bolt just glides back and forth. It's got another cool feature. Let me flip the gun around so you can see it. It's got a magazine cutoff lever. At the time, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, military thinking was that soldiers would have ammo in their rifles if they were lucky enough to have a repeating rifle with some sort of magazine on it. And then they would have a lever or some sort of system to allow them to fire single shots. You drop one cartridge in and shoot it, and as long as this lever is pointed down, none of the rounds will feed out of the magazine. Then when you need the 5 rounds in the magazine, say for rapid fire, as they would have called it, you would flip this lever up, and then when you work the bolt, it would take a round out of the magazine every time. So it's got that magazine cutoff lever. Another pretty cool feature, and see if we can get a close-up of this, it's got the Cartouche Stamp JSA for J. Sumner Adams, who was the head guy at the U.S. military arsenals, and this is his official stamp. I believe J. Sumner Adams worked in that capacity till about 1910, and this has JSA in script with the year 1900. One of the reasons I bought this rifle is because my grandfather, for whom I'm actually named, was born in the year 1900, and I was able to look up the serial number on this one on a website, and this one was made in late 1900. So my grandfather was born in November of 1900, so this is about as old as my grandfather. Other cool things on this rifle. Like I said, we've got that funky box magazine. We've got the magazine cutoff lever. We've got this, I think it's some sort of, and I'm not a Krag expert, and there are lots of websites and YouTube channels out there where you can get even more detail, but we've got this rear sight graduated out to 2,000 yards, and I think it's an older one because if you flip it around, it's got actually a little peep sight rear aperture that you can flip up or flip down depending on if you want to use a peep or not. But it's also got a very, very shallow rear notch and a not very tall front sights. That's hard to see. And of course, it's also got the bayonet lug. The Krag, probably most famous for being used in the Spanish-American War in Cuba. And it was there that the shortcomings of the Krag was kind of, the shortcomings were kind of unveiled, if you will, whenever American troops with these went up against Spanish troops with 1893 Mausers. They're both 5-shot bolt actions, but the problem with the Krag was once you ran out of your 5, you had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and reload, whereas the guy with the Mauser, he'd take a stripper clip out, put it in, push down with his thumb, and he's got 5 rounds ready to go. So the Mauser was quicker to reload for the next 5 rounds. But that is a look at my particular 1898 Krag in 3040 Krag. Thanks for watching. If you have any guns you'd like to see, leave us a comment. We'll see you next time when we bring another gun from the vault.